I went to a Toastmaster evening. First, why? Second, the evening. And third, an analysis of the evening. Number 1. Why? I always was interested in speaking. At least to a certain extent. I used to mimic voices. There is a attraction park. And in an attraction park you always have these voices in the background. Welcome to the world of... Now, ideally, if you speak, people listen. And this is a principle that, to a certain extent, probably is true. And it would also be nice if people actually listened, if you or I speak. I heard about Toastmasters in various books on self-improvement, maybe from Tim Ferriss already a few years ago. And I always thought, Toastmasters, what a weird name. I also began listening to TED Talks a few years ago and realized maybe I should try something like this. Not necessarily because I have to do it, but much more because why would I not do it? Why would I not be able to do this? As a kind of a challenge way to frame it. So, as I recently scrolled through Meetup in my city, I saw a Toastmaster evening. I thought a bit about it and I decided spontaneously to go today. Which brings us to number 2, the evening. The evening was structured. There are 3 different parts. The first part is that there are speeches. I don't know if this is the structure that applies through all Toastmaster meetings, but at least to this one. So in the beginning there are 3 prepared speeches from members. There are also people who pay attention to certain things, like one was accountable for style, the other one had to pay attention to ams and filler words, and another one, or another member, had to pay attention to the clock. And then every speaker had its own critic, which afterwards also held a speech basically about him. Now the speech was not so much a big speech as you might imagine, but it was much more just a small conference room in which then somebody was on one end and talked about something for a few minutes. There were 2 different time frames. The first one is 5 minutes, and then if the 5 minutes are over, it's a green light. Then if 6 minutes are over, I think it's orange, and then 7 minutes, over 7 minutes, it's a red light, and then it's the end. And for the feedback rounds, there is a 1 minute time limit, and then it's 1, 2, and 3. I guess ideally you want to be within the green zone or just within the time limit, so 5 minutes or 1 minute. There was a moderator, which always apparently changes, and also the other roles apparently change. I don't know how the topics are researched or discussed for the speeches then, but that's the basic structure, at least of the first part. The second part is then the critic. Oh no, that's actually the third part. So we have 3 parts in total. The first part is the prepared speeches. Then we have speeches that are basically instantaneous and made up. And this part is also moderated by a member who kind of prepared these topics. The member in my club told a personal story and then weaved in different topics. My topic was travel bug. My topic was actually a German word called Fernweh, which is basically the longing. Instead of the longing for home, it's the longing for something else, for not being home. The other translations would be itchy feet, the travel bug, Wanderlust, also a German word, or travel lust. I was asked before in the break whether I would do such a talk. It was basically just a minute of talking, ideally just a minute, and I gladly said yes, because, well, at least in this case I liked the challenge. There was also somebody else who already had been there the second time, and this person did not have a talk due to the time constraints. So because the evening is so structured, there just wasn't a time for somebody else. So then 1 minute talks are held, and then afterwards is the big feedback. Now the big feedback then includes all the different people who speak with their roles, and then they just say, okay, this person did this in her talk, this person did this in her talk. This person used many filler words, this person did not use many filler words. This person used a very nice metaphor when talking about this, and these are also treated as speeches, so the feedback things are also speeches. There was also a close-up of the entire evening, kind of a review, and then after exactly 2 hours, the evening ended. In between there was a 10-minute break. An attempt at an analysis. So for me, I don't know what I will do. Maybe I will try to do this, because some part of me thinks Well, I could do it, or I just could continue. I could just continue speaking in a room to 3 people who watch one of these videos. There's also a part of me in which that says that everything has to compete for something else. The concept of opportunity cost. If I go to this evening, it takes me about 3 hours, and I might have to prepare something, but in the same time I could also make these videos, or I could also go to another evening. I think I haven't made a decision yet. There is also something else coming up which I might go to. I saw this kind of as just a new experience I wanted kind of to add to my list of experiences, so I don't know if I will continue. If one continues, then the Toastmaster fee is, I think, now going on from the mid of this year, 60 euros for 6 months, so it's basically 10 euros a month. And there is also an entrance fee of 20 euros at least where I am. So potential problems, but also potential benefits. Now, on the plus side, this is now just my kind of personal evaluation and my personal thoughts. I obviously don't try to speak badly about the local club, so I will kind of keep it general. On the plus side, we have a selection of all the people that are interested in speaking that come together. Similar to other events of this kind, it is very hard to sort through people in order to then match your interests. If you have a certain interest, then another person might also have a certain interest, but the question is if these two interests, set A and set B, align. Now, if you are in the middle and you have this and this and this and this, so basically a lot of interests, you don't have to be in the middle. There are just maybe 10 things you're interested in, and the other person also has maybe 10 things they are interested in. But as long as there is no overlap, as long as this and this here is not identical, so there is basically a common ground, you could say. One could also draw it like this. Friends would have common areas. For parents, for example, this would be at least the children, but probably also partnerships, so they would have common subsets of interests if we have the interests as subsets. Now, due to this principle, you will meet people who want to improve their health in the gym. You will meet people that have kind of issues with their health currently at the doctor's office. And to find people through basically geographical or spatial sorting, but also through time sorting, because you won't meet a person who works out in the morning in the evening at this gym. So there are multiple sorting mechanisms and multiple filters that are actually already applied kind of automatically if you go to a certain point in time, but also in space. Now, what is the interest of speaking? The interest of speaking might be an interest in speaking. If we take that apart, there might be an underlying motivation that one wants to at least be interested in speaking, because that's the interest of speaking. But maybe a person who is interested in speaking because they want to improve their speaking. Now, which kind of people would be likely to improve or to try to improve their speaking, and therefore maybe search out a Toastmasters club? Maybe people that are, in terms of the speaking ability, maybe on the question is obviously which kind of people would want to improve their speaking. In general, I think it would be reasonable to assume that speaking ability is a Gaussian curve, like many other distributions. So there might be people that are very, if this is skill basically, it would be, this would actually not really, so this here is skill. Here we have very skilled speakers, here we have unskilled speakers. This here is the amount of people at every given speaker skill level. Most people are average. The average is about 2/3 of this whole thing. There are a few people that are very good and a few people that are very bad. Now the question is, who will seek out speaking, or speaking opportunities, or a speaking club? One might argue people who might have a problem with speaking might notice this problem and try to at least get into the normal distribution. One might also argue people who are already very interested in speaking or already can speak very well, then seek out opportunities to even get further along. One might also have a lot of people from here and here and here. I cannot say something really about who seeks out this, but maybe people who are very good or very bad might seek out something. If we take a look at the gym, as a comparison, but maybe the gym isn't a good comparison. Let's just take me as an example. I am not that skilled in speaking, so therefore I kind of made up this thing where I talk in front of a camera and kind of have to sort my things out in order for somebody else to understand them at least. to be able to formulate full sentences, to be able to basically state the things that I want to state. The things that are in my head, I have to transfer somehow onto this paper here and also into speech. Let's forget about the whole who would seek out something, because this would kind of imply that I would make a judgment on the people who are there, if they are already very skilled or not skilled or in the middle. Let's just say I am not that skilled and I want to improve my speaking, therefore I seeked out this. But I obviously also kind of want to connect with people who are also into speaking, so this would also be kind of a networking opportunity if one wants to see it as such. Now I want to offer an additional point in the analysis here. And this additional point in the analysis is, how does one learn? The question, how does one learn? I listened to a lot of podcasts or episodes from Andrew Huberman, like in the last 2 years since the podcast existed, or maybe it's 3 years already. He is a neuroscientist at Stanford and talks a lot about how we learn, how the brain works, how to optimize basically your day or your daily schedule. Basically, he covers different aspects of health and how to optimize them. A concept that often is there is the concept of neuroplasticity. Basically, the brain's ability to learn. And one of the methods in order to achieve better neuroplasticity is to try to be on the edge of your skill level. So there is also this concept called flow. So if there are two extremes, we call it a spectrum. Then if there are two extremes, like this is very easy for me on the one side, this is very easy for me, and this is very hard for me, then somewhere in the middle there, ideally maybe in the middle, exactly in the middle, symmetrically, there is flow. Flow is that the thing is not too hard and not too easy. Of course this makes sense. Why does this make sense? Because too easy already kind of implies the implication already is in the words too easy and too hard. So, and also we imply the extremes, so therefore this is kind of a truism. Don't do things that are too hard, don't do things that are too easy, don't do things that are too bad, don't do things that are too anything, because too already implies that it is basically not the optimum point. Don't be too sick, don't have too little money, etc., etc. Now, the question is, how does one improve speaking? There probably are many principles and concepts that can be applied to speaking that are very similar in learning anything else. And exposure to basically speaking, or just basically trying to do the thing, and maybe being more on the edge, basically, so more on the side where it is hard, where you make a lot of mistakes, that's one of the principles kind of to use, that you want to have a certain period in time at which you try to make as many mistakes as possible. If we now have 10 people, and these 10 people are together in an evening, and they want to improve their speaking, then we currently have 9, so now it's 10. Then if they want to come together and they work out together, for example, in the gym, let's just say the common interest is not speaking, but it's actually working out in the gym, then they can use different machines in the gym. If these people come together and want to play basketball or soccer, then these people can come together and play together. And everybody has basically, if it's an hour of play, is an hour of playing. But with speaking, there's an asymmetry, at least if this one wants an audience of 9. So if everyone wants an audience of 9 and not just an audience of one-on-one, one could also say one splits into groups of 2 and then they speak to each other. But maybe the whole thing about this speaking thing is to speak in front of more people, which also increases the pressure, which might be good for this very short period in which you talk. But for the whole evening, I was there for 3 hours. And the whole thing I did for the whole evening was not to speak, but the thing I did the most was to listen. Because if one person speaks, the other people all have to listen. So for speaking about in total probably 5 minutes, but also I connected a little bit with the people afterwards. But the actual speaking, the actual training was for me just 5 minutes of exposure. I listened to basically the rest of the evening to the other people. This might come with the downside of you having the opportunity cost of you being able to constantly speak. If I want to increase how many push-ups I can do, then the best thing is maybe not to go to an evening where I do 1 push-up and the other people all kind of look at me, and then the next person does one push-up, but maybe we do them together. But the problem with speaking is that somebody has to listen. So in order to have an audience at a speaking club, most people have to listen. And this asymmetry kind of skews the potential learning effect, or kind of diminishes the potential learning effect, at least one could argue. They also asked me in the end, will I return? In front of everybody, and I just didn't really know what to say. So I said something along the lines of, there is also this other club, so there are two versions of this club in my town or city, which is an English version and a German version. I might have maybe some potential benefit in the English version, or a slight competitive advantage with speaking English, but I don't know at this point. It would also be nice to get to the next level. So there are these competitions within your club, and then you can get basically to the next local level, and then maybe compete in the European Championships of speaking at Toastmasters, which would be a fairly nice challenge. I just don't know yet.